Throughout our nation's history, communities have always bonded together when disaster strikes. Emergency management simply creates a framework to help communities reduce vulnerabilities to threats and hazards and cope with disasters. Emergency management is an essential role of government. The Constitution tasks the states with responsibility for public health and safety. Hence, they are responsible for public risks, while the federal government's ultimate obligation is to help when state, local, or individual entities are overwhelmed. The overall goals of emergency management at all levels are, first, to reduce the loss of life, then to minimize property loss and damage to the environment, and finally, to protect the jurisdiction from all threats and hazards. We tend to think of emergency management as a relatively new concept. However, the idea of assessing risks and organizing to deal with those risks has been around in one fashion or another since humans began forming civilizations. Our current vision of emergency management has not always been the same as it is today. Rather, it has evolved to reflect our national values and the threats we face. Today, we seek to create a secure and resilient nation. We have learned that doing so requires that we work together to build and sustain capabilities across the whole community to prevent, protect against, mitigate, respond to, and recover from the threats and hazards that pose the greatest risk.
What is emergency management? The numerous definitions of emergency management, the definition below based on the one developed by the International Association of Emergency Managers at IAEM.org or International Association of Emergency Managers.org. Emergency management is a manual function charged with creating framework which companies reduce vulnerability, communities reduce vulnerability, threats, hazards, and cope with disasters. Integrated emergency management, the key concept at the top of the emergency management in the early 1980s, with the embodied with the all threat hazards approach with the direction, control, coordination, disaster, regardless of location, size, complexity. It gives the go hand in hand with the concept of the whole community preparedness. Integrated emergency management is more of the mythology as a cultural to achieve the unity effort. A way to think about emergency management, joint enterprises intended to create organizational culture critical to achieving the unit of effort between government members of the community, non-government organizations, and private sector. Emergency management must be integrated into daily decisions, not just during times of disaster. Alright, emergency management and malfunction charged with creating framework with the communities does reduce the proximity effects of threats as or copes with disaster. I'm going to put occurrences. Check our we'll try again. Vulnerability. Alright, that was correct. Emergency management is the management of function charged with creating with a framework within the communities to reduce vulnerability of threats, hazards, of the cope with disasters. Why emergency management? The breaches of the emergency management function are timeless and enduring. They include the following: threats, hazards exist, always have, and always will. Experience with observing the actual incidents and indicate that the disaster events have a significant impact with the human environment. Success with dealing with the disasters depend primarily on how well prepared, organized, coordinated we are. Experience has shown that the emergency management principles and practices actually work to achieve successful outcomes. What is the integrated approach? Integrated emergency management increases the emergency management capability with establishing, strengthening existing network linkage, partnership, communities across the organizational logistical boundaries, enabling all emergency functions to communicate with each other, creative thinking, the resource shortfalls, coordinated with the testing, training, exercising, improved ability with see the big picture, simultaneously response. Emergency management principles. The emergency management principles have identified with agreed upon by the practice before March 2007. They have no agreed upon definition principle that could form a basis for the emergency management. In September 2007, the Emergency Management Institute Higher Education Program Work Group identified the following 8 principles: comprehensive, progressive, risk-driven, integrated, collaborative, coordinated, flexible, and professional. Instructions. Read the statement and match each corresponding emergency management principle with the one done with the submit. Alright, emergency managers consider taking account with threat hazards, all stakeholders, and permit impacts relevant disasters. We're going to put collaborative there. Emergencies anticipate future preventive preparatory measures to building disaster resistance disasters. Emergency uses sound risk management principles, threat hazards, risk analysis, impact analysis, assuming priorities and resources. Sorry, we're going to put that one as collaborative. We're going to put this one as risk-driven. Emergencies ensure effort among all lines of government and all elements of community. Emergencies create innovative approaches to solving the disaster challenge. Emergencies ensure unity of effort of maintaining all government and all entities. Flexible. Emergencies create broad, sincere relationships. Alright, and the answers were incorrect. Comprehensive emergencies consider to take into account all threats and all stakeholders' impacts relevant to the disaster. Emergency and progressive emergencies anticipate future disaster, take protective, preventive, preparatory measures to build disaster resistant and disaster resilient. Risk-driven emergency managers use sound risk management, identifying risk analysis, impact, assign priority resources. Integrated emergencies ensure effort among all efforts and elements of the community. Collaborative emergencies create and sustain broad, sincere relationships with organizing trust, performance, build consensus, facilitate coordinated emergency management, synchronize activities relative to the common purpose. Flexible L. Emergencies managers use creative and innovative approaches to disaster changes.
Now that you understand the overall intent of the emergency management function, let's take a moment to look at how the system evolved. Prior to the 1800s, disasters were managed solely with local resources. In December 1802, fire engulfed the city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, destroying large areas. This disaster exceeded local capabilities and had a severe impact on commerce for the entire nation. In response, Congress acted swiftly to pass the Congressional Relief Act of 1803, enabling the federal government to be involved in a local disaster. The next notable era in the evolution of emergency management began with World War II in the 1940s and continued with the Cold War era beginning in the 1950s. During World War II, the federal government established civil defense programs, such as air raid warning and emergency shelter systems, to protect the civilian population. The Disaster Relief Act of 1950 gave the President authority to issue disaster declarations that allowed federal agencies to provide direct assistance to state and local governments. The Federal Civil Defense Act of 1950 created a nationwide system of civil defense agencies, and defense drills became routine in schools, government agencies, and other organizations. During this era, emergency management was thought of as an extension of the civil defense movement. In 1952, President Truman issued Executive Order 10427, which emphasized that federal disaster assistance was intended to supplement, not supplant, the resources of state, local, tribal, and private sector organizations. Today's emergency management system supports the premise that disasters are best managed at the lowest possible governmental level, and that federal assistance supports and does not direct these efforts. During the 1960s and 70s, as the Cold War was ending, the nation experienced numerous devastating natural disasters. These disasters drew the nation's attention away from the civil defense mission to the need for well-coordinated federal response and recovery operations during natural disasters. As a result, Congress passed the Disaster Relief Act of 1969. This act created a federal coordinating officer to represent the President in the relief effort. The law was extended as the Disaster Relief Act of 1974, which established the process of presidential disaster declarations. To ensure coordination of federal disaster response and recovery, President Carter's 1979 executive order merged many of the separate disaster-related responsibilities into a new Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. In November 1988, Congress amended the Disaster Relief Act and renamed it the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, often referred to as the Stafford Act. The Stafford Act created the system in place today by which a presidential disaster declaration triggers financial and physical assistance through FEMA. At the beginning of this century, the nation was confronted with the terrorist attacks of September 11th and major natural disasters such as Hurricane Katrina. These events prompted dramatic changes in emergency management, including the need to safeguard the nation from all threats and hazards.
Review brief history of emergency management authorities. In order to understand our integrated emergency management system, it's important first to understand how the role of federal government in disaster response has evolved over the past 20 years. Then show the response authorities base timeline, 1800 Congressional Act of 1803, 1900s Federal Defense Act of 1950, Executive Order 10427 of 1952, Executive Order 12127 of 1979, Stafford Act of 1988, amended in 2008, and Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act of 2006. Stafford Act, the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance, Public Law 102-707, created with the system of the place today with the President Disaster Declaration triggers financial, physical assistance through FEMA. The Stafford Act covers all heads, including national disaster terrorist events. Primary authority of the federal government to respond with a disaster and emergencies. Give the FEMA with the response to coordinate with the government response effort to the President authority with the delegate with the FEMA through special separate mechanisms. Describe the program process which federal government to provide the disaster and emergency assistance to state, local governments, tribal nations eligible and private non-profit organization individuals affected with declared major disaster and emergencies. Stafford Act definition of emergency and major disaster. Under the Stafford Act, the President designates an incident as an emergency or a major disaster. Certain circumstances, the President may declare the emergency unilateral, may be one declared major disaster. Request of the Governor, Tribal Chief Executive, certify the state, the tribal government, and effective with the local governments overwhelmed. Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act. Hurricane Katrina in August 2005 was the most devastating with the national disaster U.S. history. Of the gaps of the came with apparent with the response of the disaster relief of the Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act 2006. Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act significantly reorganized FEMA, provided substantial new authority to remedy gaps in response, included more robust preparedness mission. FEMA Act established a disability coordinator with the development of the guidelines to ensure that an individual's disability direct with emergency preparedness disaster relief, established a national emergency family register locator system, reunify separated family and members, coordinate support precautionary evacuation recovery efforts, provide transportation assistance relocating and returning an individual displaced from their residence or major disaster, provide case management assistance, identify and address the unmet needs of the survivor major death disasters. Sandy Recovery Improvement Act. The Sandy Recovery Improvement Act of the 2013 made change with the disaster assistance delivery with a variety of programs. Significant change of the Sandy Recovery Act Improvement Act was the amendment of the Stafford Act authorizing the tribal government to request the declaration of emergency major disaster without going through the state. Alright, design simple instructions, follow the list. And then design supplemental efforts available to the state. Design supplemental efforts in the available to state disaster relief funds.
Now that you understand the historical roots of emergency management, we'll review the current doctrine. Presidential Policy Directive 8, or PPD 8, describes the nation's approach to national preparedness. The National Preparedness Goal is the cornerstone for that approach. The goal identifies the nation's core capabilities required for executing the 5 mission areas of prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. The National Preparedness System is an integrated set of guidance, programs, and processes that enable us to work together to achieve the national preparedness goal. As a nation, we are most prepared to face threats and hazards when we work together. The National Preparedness System provides the approach, resources, and tools for us to work together toward achieving our goal of a secure and resilient nation.
Our President Policy Directive number 8, preparedness requires the commitment of the National President Policy Directive number 8, which describes the national approach for the preparedness that does one that involves the whole community, including the individual business community with the faith-based organizations, schools, tribal governments, all levels of the government. Presidential Policy Directive Number 8 links together the national prepared efforts to the following key elements. National Preparedness Goal states at the end of which we achieve. The National Preparedness System describes the means of achieving the goal. The National Planning System supports all threats and all hazards approaching the development plans, explain what we deliver. Annual National Preparedness Report documents progress made towards achieving goal. Ongoing national effort build with such preparedness helps maintain momentum. Whole community initiative describes who engaged in national preparedness. Personal President Directive Number 8 of the vision. National preparedness, how we get there. National plan system, what we do. What community initiate, who we engage. Annual National Preparedness Report, how we are doing. And National Preparedness Goal, what we wish to achieve. National Preparedness Goal and President of the integrated, layered, and whole community approach of preparedness. The goal itself is the result of the contribution of the whole community recognizes that everyone to contribute to the value and benefit of the national preparedness effort. The National Preparedness Goal. A secure, resilient nation with capabilities required across the whole community to prevent, protect against, mitigate, respond to, recover the threats and hazards that pose greatest risk. National Preparedness Goal Capabilities Mission Area. The emphasis of the National Preparedness Goal is on building sustaining core capabilities across 5 missions. The core of the capability of the individual competency emergency management professions should possess, rather they are essential to the execution of each mission. National Preparedness Goal Mission Areas: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, recovery, core capabilities. The core capabilities district critical elements necessary for the national preparedness goal, essential for the execution of each mission: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, recovery, and development sustained through combined efforts of the whole community. Mission areas of the phase of the emergency for each of the compromise, the capability, risk for the mission, for the function of the time during and after an incident that cover all threats and have it's important to shift your thinking to the capabilities. Prevention refers to the capability of the necessary to avoid and prevent, stop, threatening actual terrorism. Prevent capabilities include, but not limited to, information sharing, warning, domestic counterterrorism, preventing acquisition and use of weapons of mass destruction for the purpose of the prevention framework. Prevention refers to preventing imminent threats. Protection. Protection refers to those capabilities necessary to secure the homeland against the terrorism and the man-made with the natural disaster protection capability include, but not limited to, defensive against weapons of mass destruction, defense of agricultural goods, and critical infrastructure protection key, leadership of the event with the border security, maritime, transportation security, immigration security, and cybersecurity. Mitigation. Mitigation refers to the capability necessary to reduce the life of the property, lessening the impact of a disaster. Mitigation includes, but not limited to, community-wide risk reduction project efforts to improve the resilience of the critical infrastructure key, source lifelines, rise risk reduction specific to vulnerability, natural hazards, active terrorism initiative that reduce future risk of the disasters as occurred. Response. Response refers to the capabilities necessary to save lives, protect property and the environment, meet basic human needs after the incident has occurred. Recovery. Recovery refers to the capability necessary for the specific communities affected by the incident. Recover the effectively include, but not limited to, rebuilding the infrastructure system, provide adequate interim, long-term housing, survivors, restoring health, social, community service, promoting economic development, restoring national and cultural resources. All right, which of it is true or false? The national preparedness goal is an integrated, layered, whole community approach for the preparedness will result in a secure and resilient nation, and that is true. The core capabilities of individual competency each emergency management should possess in order to receive credentials. True. Mission areas are equivalent to the phase of emergency management. That's true. Let's check. Try again. False. Alright, the National Preparedness Goal is true. The National Preparedness Goal cornerstone, false and false. So, National Preparedness System. National Preparedness System integrated with the guidance of the program process that enable the whole community to meet with the National Preparedness Goal of the system is comprised of 6 major components shown with the graphic. Reviewing, updating, identifying asset risk and assessment capability requirements, building, restoring, sustaining capabilities, preparing delivery capabilities, validating capabilities, and reviewing, updating. National Plan Framework. National Plan Framework explains the role of each mission of the national preparedness to provide with the overall overarching strategy, director, and how the community build with the sustainable delivery the core capability of the National Planning Framework is implemented with the national efforts to achieve the highest preparedness partners across the whole community, encourages the development and share with the understanding broad levels of strategic implications, which can inform the critical decision building, sustained capability, capacity of the framework to describe the whole community works together to achieve the national preparedness goal. Show the national preparedness, secure, and resistant capability required for the whole community to prevent, protect against, mitigate, respond, and recover threats, and have the greatest risk. Leveraging the whole community development capabilities, meeting the final with the connecting strength of the community required with the leveraging expertise of the capacity of individual household, private and non-profit sector, community, and include the advocacy, faith-based organization, or other levels of government. 34. National Incident Management System Major Components. 5 major points of the National Incident Management System approach: preparedness, communication, information, resource of the management, command, and ongoing management system preparedness. Effective emergency management and incident of the response activities for the hope of the preparedness, effective the conduct of the ongoing advance of the potential into the prepared involves integrated combination of the assessment plan with the procedure protocol for training, extra of the personal qualification, licensure, certification, equipment certification, evaluation and revision, communications, information, and tech management. Emergency management incident of the activities rely on the communication information system to provide with a common operation picture of the all command with a coordinated site with the national incident management system describe the requirement necessary for the standardized framework for the communication emphasis for the need with a common operation picture of the component of the base for the concept of interoperable, reliable, scalability, probability, as well as the resiliency tendency for the communication information system. Resource management. Resources such as personnel and equipment and supply with the need of the support critical incident object with the following source for the fluid adaptable requirement of the incident of the national incident management system finds standard mechanism establishes resource management process identified with the requirements of order that require mobilized track report, cover, demobilize, reimburse, inventory resources. Command and management. The command management that comes home with the National Incident Management System designed with enable the effective and efficient incident with the management coordinator that provides flexible, standardized incident management structure based on 3 key organizational construction: incident command system, multi-agent coordinated system, and public information. Ongoing management and maintenance. With the auspices, ongoing management and maintenance, there are 2 components of the National Integration Center and supporting technologies. Emergency Management Program is standard. Support for the National Preparedness Goal for 2 programs with the government, private, and sector according to accreditation are available. Emergency Management Accreditation Program, or EMAP, is standard with the voluntary assessment accreditation process of government programs, voluntary private sector preparedness accreditation certification program, or PS Prep voluntary program, primarily serving the research of the private and non-profit entities. Emergency Management Accreditation Program, EMAP, provides state, territory, and local government emergency management problems. Program is voluntary accreditation, profit intent with the incur with the examination strength of the weakness of the jurisdiction emergency management program, serve the corrective measures, communication planning among the different sectors of the government and community. EMAP builds standard of the assessment work on various organizations, adding the requirement of the documentation verification needed standards nor self-assessment alone can be provided. PS Prep. PS Prep is a voluntary program probably serve the research of the private non-profit and each interest in comprehensive the business community program management. PS Prep is the result of the Public Law 11053 implementation recommendation 911 and Commission Act intended to improve the preparedness private sector for the non-profit organization. PS Prep is from 3 prepared standards: ASIS International British Standard Institution, National Fire Protection Association. Certified Emergency Manager, or CM. CM Voluntary Certification Program offered an International Association of Emergency Managers for individual emergency management profession. Certification indicates that the individual experience with the knowledge, skill, abilities, effectively to manage comprehensive emergency management program and improve the emergency management capabilities. Putting it all together, the Foundation Integrated Management System consists of authorities, guidance, policy, principles, programs. Presenting with this lesson, this key engage the whole community to build and sustain capabilities, contribute to achieving the national preparedness goal, assessing and preparing the most relevant urgent risk, establishing an emergency management program based on emergency management principles, using the guidance for the national preparedness system, National Incident Management System build capabilities. Which of the following ways are the whole community to contribute to the integrated youth creative and solving disasters? Alright. It was actually, you could pick more than one. Alright. You got me there. Alright, this shows the lesson resources, management principles, programs. Lesson 1 summary. Lesson introduce foundations of emergency management, including intent of the emergency management principle, history, emergency management, evolving national preparedness document. In the next lesson, you will learn the FEMA's mission goal, key partners, the integration of emergency management, local government. See link access printable version for the lesson. And then we're going to go to the next one. Lesson 2 overview. Cut the tape there.